this computer. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, we can carry on talking about creativity because that really fascinates me. So currently, I've been writing a book, and there's a few people that I'm friends with who we're doing swaps, and we're reading each other's books and things.
Oh, nice.
And when I read the books and when I'm kind of like making my notes and everything, I find that when I'm connecting, I think, with the writer, although this is my projection, I don't know, I think it's when they're in flow. And it's when they're like, they're just getting out of themselves and they're just like spontaneously writing. And I feel like I get really like sucked in when that's happening. Like it's like, because I know the writing art very well. So I know exactly what should be there. You know, I trained in it, you know, like a bit like you with classical music, I'm sure, you know, how the composition is and the techniques
the structure
of it.
and
Yeah, the structure. Yeah. And and so I know what should be coming and what should be revealed at what point. It's like very boring when you look at like the breakdown of how
like the hero's journey and all that.
Yeah. But it's like when I really connect, it's like there's something else happening, and we don't know when or how that something else is happening, but it's like this spontaneity where you become like ultra creative. It's
yeah, I totally relate. I was saying when I started studying piano, that started happening spontaneously, and that was actually my first contact with spirituality, because I was a very kind of atheist, scientifically materialistic kind of person, and something started happening in creativity that it really felt like this cannot be me doing this, because there was just something coming through musically that I didn't understand. I didn't understand the kind of the music at that level, and so that really kind of prompted this sense of there's something more than what I thought I am. And that's the creativity is just such a beautiful thing, and actually the process of that relationship with creativity, I think, is super powerful for waking up, and not just what artists bring to society, but for people within themselves to discover the creative flow. Or yeah, I'm all about creativity. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, you can kind of feel it happening in conversations as well, like this kind of sinking into the just speaking.
It's just the creativity of the mystery.
What's your favorite piece of music? Or your favorite pieces of music?
Oh, it constantly changes, but lately is an Argentinian composer called Ginastera, and he wrote a bunch of piano music, and there's a really short piece that's called La Danza de la Moza Donosa. So it's like the dance of the giddy woman, and it's just really, that's the one I learned recently, and so I'm very in love with it right now. And it used to be, but the last couple of years through the pandemic, it was a Chopin ballad, and it's actually was his favorite piece as well. But that one's such a spectacular and impossible to play. So, but it's so beautiful.
And what is it that gets you? Is it the playing? Like I get that too. Like sometimes I hear, so my art's like more storytelling, and like when I was younger, there was acting. And actually recently I went to the theatre with my mum, and I started saying, because I know some of the plays so well, I started saying some of the lines. And it's like, I know there's a flow to the lines. And I used to have this with Shakespeare as well. There's like a flow in the way you speak them. And it was really interesting watching somebody else that I could tell wasn't in flow speaking them. Like they weren't, it's like I hear the music of the words, and it's like I know how they flow. I'm not saying I know it all, like it's just in certain times when you're in that energy. I'm can imagine that you get that when you're playing music. It's like you can feel the rhythm of it, you can feel it inside your bones of like exactly how it's meant to come out. I can't say that I can express it like Shakespeare should, but I can hear it when it's expressed, like in that flow, in that energy.
Yeah, for me, at first it was just the love of just the beauty of the music, and so I was just craving to be involved in it in some way, and so to perform it was just touching that beauty, and it was kind of coming through me as well. Once you even the first piece I learned was a Bach prelude, and it's very simple, but it's a stunning piece, and so it's something quite simple you can learn, and then you're completely immersed in this beauty, and that's where, to me, there's just this taste of. At first, it was this sense of there's something more than what I am, but then it was kind of the other way around, that realizing I'm not what I thought, the small part that I thought I was. And so that relationship and that dance was quite a beautiful thing. And that flow, I think, where you're talking about, that when that flow happens is when this kind of dissolution, in a sense, is starting to happen, and something bigger than just the kind of small mind comes in. And I find that just it's quite blissful. And even if it's performing something that's already written, when it's really in that connected flow, then the music becomes alive and it's fresh and it's new, and it can be played in so many different ways just by being attuned to that. But when it's improvisation as well, that's where it's really quite wild, because, and especially if it's in front of an audience, because you really cannot just stop and like go back. And so it's just going with what's going and what's coming, and it's quite a ride. But the creativity is just so, for me, it's just being so in touch with the rawness and the beauty of life.
Yeah, it's like the coding of the game and the gameplay, like there's no separation. It's like when you're doing the inspiration, or when you're playing, like I've forgotten the name, Chekhov. No, not Chekhov, that's a playwright. Who was it that you said was your?
I mentioned Chopin.
Chopin, that's right. It's like there's no distance between the coding of it, like the writing of it, and the expression. Even if somebody else wrote it, it's like the immediacy of it, like you're right in contact with the creator, which is invisibility. Like, I mean, like we can't even get to that, but you can, it's just so, it becomes so close. And that to me is true art. And that's exactly why I got into art as well.
Nice.
And it's just and I love it when I'm watching a performance and you suddenly just see the person disappear. Like when my mom and I went to theatre last time I was back in the UK, it was so fascinating watching the show, because I could see when they weren't being authentic. I felt like I could see, and then I could see when they became authentic, that they weren't really. And when I was studying acting, they had it was Stanislavski that they taught, and the method that they taught. So it was very much this idea of like, you've got to be really with the emotion, not reserved from it. So it's like if the character feels sadness, like you've got to completely be immersed in that sadness.
Yeah.
And it's really, yeah, beautiful. You know, so much of life is people being inauthentic, like humans being inauthentic.
100%, yeah.
It's
So much.
yeah, like not really acting out their coding, like they're acting out like the layers on top. I mean, that is their authentic self, but they're acting out like the layers on top. And so, like, for me, the music, the theater, the art was a way of like feeling more connected to humans or connected to life.
The freedom to not be acting out what is the kind of
Yeah.
conditioned behavior of this should be performed in this way or played in this way. And as if you're in the middle of that performance and the feeling that comes up maybe isn't the one that you thought should be the right one in that scene. And you try to create the one that you thought is the right one in that scene, you're going to probably ruin it. But if you just go with the feeling that's coming up, it might be true creative flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, so it's just this, what can communicate that there's nothing better than this. So whatever has that kind of, whatever comes from there will communicate that. So in any artistic performance, even as you're saying, even if it's written or pre-composed, in the moment when that's being performed, it's, if it's really being performed from that place of that newness and that freshness of this moment, then it's communicating the beauty of this moment versus what it's supposed to be based on something else and the ideas of the past.
I'm just about to
Nice.
got myself a new chair.
Nice. And how is creativity for you now in writing? Does it change for you when you go into the flow of writing and coming out? Is that something that's very kind of noticeable when it's inspired, let's say?
Generally, when I'm not inspired, it's either because I'm having an emotional block, so I've got an emotion going, or because I'm getting it wrong. So if I'm writing it wrong, I generally can know because I begin to get bored or I begin to flick or I, you know, like, and that's generally where I'm getting the character. I'm not speaking the characters or doing it correctly. So that, or I'm having an emotional block, like I can't do this, you know, like it's too hard. This is too hard to do. I can't. And then there's an emotion that comes with that. Like sometimes it's practical, like it sometimes is too hard. Like I'm not. I do. Yeah, it's too. But it's sometimes an emotional, like a past karma that's coming up from school. You know, like I can't do it, and then it. Yeah, and then I can quite quickly realize because I begin to not be able to do so much. Then there's other times where you're just tired. You're just, like it's just not the inspiration there. So, yeah, I noticed that. I mean, I know this sounds really like since the shift happened, 12 years ago, that generally if I put my mind towards something, I begin to be able to do it. And that might be because I don't have an elongated thought of I can't do it. So there might be moments of that, but I don't have an elongated. So I keep presenting myself to whatever I'm trying to do creatively, and then I accomplish it. And I don't get so frustrated with going back and doing it again and rewriting or making mistakes. So that's my experience. Whereas when I was younger, I think I used to give up a lot easier, prior to that
relate, yeah.
shift. But now it's like I can just, and that to me, like people that do brilliant things, they don't do it quickly. They often, there is the exceptions that do it incredibly young. But a lot of the time
fast,
it's like and fast. But a lot of the time it's like learning the art for many, many years, and redoing and
not
redoing
giving
and
up.
redoing and not giving up, and that perseverance, and also like being able to overcome failure. Like that's a massive part of it, like failing and getting up again. And when I was younger, I couldn't take that. Like I would be too knocked around and couldn't keep getting back up again, and would give up thinking I can't do this, and then just give up. So now that like and that feels more in flow, this natural ability to because like if you're going to do art, there is the few that we know of that become really successful very early on, and maybe that's from a previous life. There is a flow there and a memory of the art from the previous life, like there's some that started like 6 years old being a genius at piano playing.
Yeah.
Like, but
you can only imagine they passed on from being pretty good in the past life.
Yeah, I mean, how else
ready to get going.
Yeah. But a lot of the time it's like a real dedication to your art, so you become really one with your art. You really learn your art, and then through learning the art and really relaxing into the art, the inspiration comes. Like when you start improvising, like as you really know piano, like you really know your craft, and then you begin to be able to let that creativity come out.
Yeah, to me it's been a lot of like a really great teacher, because also that passion and that love for this art gives you, it's like the passion and the love is there and it's given, and you in a sense don't choose it, or in a really big sense you don't choose it. It's there, and you can either fight it and try to avoid it, or listen and obey. And if you do, then it's the greatest teacher, because it'll take you to places like what you're describing. You'll be totally knocked over by it, and then you either try to suppress the love for it or face the challenge.
Yeah.
And that's been, to me, it's been a really beautiful journey, but quite brutal, and especially in I don't know in other arts, but in music, you're trying to learn these grades to perform them, would be decades of work.
Right.
And so, at a very young age, I tried to learn things way above my kind of capacity. And so it was quite brutal, but there was just so much passion for it that I would just play things terribly and then just feel like at least I got 1% of it. And it just was full of like, this is so beautiful, but I would just destroy them shamelessly.
How old were you when you started playing piano?
Well, actually, it wasn't that. That was part of the problem. I was about 14, so it's already way too late to even try to learn the instrument seriously. But I instantly, I started kind of self-taught, but I just grabbed like the greatest pieces that I could find and tried to learn them, like Beethoven sonatas, and I had just barely started, so I was really like making a big mess. But it was just this passion for it. I didn't really care playing it poorly, and obviously I didn't try to perform that to anybody, but my family suffered. And there are pieces that now I can say I can play. I started trying to learn them then, and I can play them quite okay now. I'm quite kind of proud of it, but it's like decades of bashing them. But yeah, it's been such a great teacher. Yeah, just the passion for that art.
I'm returning again and again and again as if it's the first time.
Yeah,
that's one of the most important lessons that I didn't understand. When I was a teenager, it's this returning to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's the really seeing the truth of all of that loss, and the failure is just past, and it's only real at the level of memory. And so it's just constantly teaching you to come back to the reality of there's only now.
Yeah, only now. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It really is. Yep.
Yeah.
Especially when you do live performances and you really like mess up. Like you really, and then you have to deal with that. I don't know if that ever happened to you, but when I was acting as a child, that happened to me.
It happened to me. It was a really big mess up because it was my first performance, and I ended up in the hospital a month before from getting like completely like terribly sick from terror. And then the program.
How old were you?
I was about 19 or something like, yeah, I was about 19. And the thing is that because I had been connected to a teacher that was a really renowned teacher, which I didn't know that. And so, but she was really helping me with this more creativity and the spontaneity of improvisation. And she set up this huge concert. There were about 500 people in a pretty well-known theater with other of her students, and they were all kind of prodigies, and I wasn't. I was just the kind of weirdo that did the creative improvisation. And so she asked me, do you want to do the improvisation in the program? And I was terrified of improvising. So I said, no, let's just do the kind of classical pieces. But the classical pieces, I wasn't good at them. And so I was going to this concert completely torn, and I tried to perform like Chopin etudes, and I literally started messing them up like I would in the class. And I started sweating, and I was starting getting just completely full of shame and horror in front of 400, 500 people. And then she got up onto the stage and said, do you want to improvise? And I literally felt like, you are divine inspiration right now. And it was just the last thing I wanted to do is to keep performing those pieces. And I remember in that instant, my head just went down and I was completely gone. And then just improvisation happened, and I was barely aware of what was being played. I was just feeling this current and the music coming up, but it was just so much tension built in and this huge release. And then after that, in a sense, it was a success, but that first part was just such a big mess up. And that was a huge lesson, that there was something about first of all, that I really needed to practice easier pieces if I was going to perform them, but that the creative part of the improvisation was very natural to me, because it really just something took over and I was gone. And there was just this current. And then people came after completely stunned by what I had played, and I was as well. So that was such a big lesson. And for me, it's a sense of I cannot myself play that. So it wasn't me, but at the same time, I knew it wasn't not me. So that was this big kind of like, what the hell's going on? What's happening here? And that's kind of where kind of the spiritual exploration began. Because there's such a contrast of, I cannot possibly play this. I know it wasn't me. I felt it wasn't me, but also it wasn't not me. You know, I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And how was the mess up for you? You were saying.
Oh, I think there were many. I think it was yeah, just many. I mean, I stopped acting as I when I was about in my early 20s. I realized that I really couldn't be an actress because I couldn't envision a life in where I had to audition every day, you know, because auditioning I found difficult.
So brutal. Yeah.
Yeah, and also my reading skills, they're a lot better now, but at the time they weren't. And people were understanding if you said I'm dyslexic, because, you know, a lot of the time you go and you audition, you have to read the script, you're like, like it's, and some people were so good at that. But yeah, many times, yeah, I used to have dreams. I think I still occasionally have these dreams where I'm going on stage and I realize I haven't learned my lines. Like, and so then you're stood on stage, you're like, like, please say
Yeah.
those dreams. But yeah, many times, most would be around learning lines. I think the worst thing for me though was auditioning. Like that was when I started auditioning properly about 17, 18. Yeah, it was just like going into a room and I just found that a horror show, you know, with 2, 3, 10 people just standing
I
there.
can't imagine. That's like it's so horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have to go and sit down and have an interview and you know, and you have to do different types of things. You have to be looked at, you know, your body has to be looked at. They don't look at your body back with a mic, but they want to look at you, you know, like there's some
Yeah,
physicality
they're
that's
looking at
important
you
to it.
pretty. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then there's like, and then you normally have to do, you know, some reading stuff, and then you've got your learnt pieces. Oh yeah, that was, I mean, that's why I stopped acting, because I realized that that would be the
Brutal.
prominent part of an actor's life was auditioning. You know,
Yeah.
you're going for like 99 auditions and then get one job, if that.
Yeah. Wow.
So like just so many times, like, and I think it was mostly around singing. I really can't stay in tune. And sometimes they're like sing and you're like, you can't, like, that, you know, when you're
But
when you're
why are you
trained
asking me?
sing, but
Yeah.
like if they ask you to sing, then you have to act like you can sing because they're looking at your acting. So you've got to just do it. You've got to just like act like you can dance, act like you can sing, you know. And yeah, just so many like moments
Yeah.
where I would just go but also the opposite moments. But that was mostly when I was in productions where you just lose yourself. Have you ever read A Clockwork Orange?
I've seen the movie. I haven't read the book.
When I was at college, they decided to do Clockwork Orange, and they cast me as the main character, which is normally done by a boy, but they made us androgynous, you know, so there was no boys and girls in the thing, in it. So it was like we were all just like one gender, and I was the main character. And in the stage play, it's like you're doing a one-person show, a one-person monologue with words that don't really make sense. Like he makes up a lot of his own words and a lot of own sentences, and then yeah, it's like really something, the stage play as acting it. And so just for that, like I had so much to do and so much to remember, and we did it in the square as well, so the audience was all around us.
All around.
Yeah, like
Yeah, quite an experience.
yeah, it was quite something. And we did it with no furniture, so our bodies were the furniture, and like, it was like really mad piece. The director was like really amazing,
Wow.
but I just didn't have the ability for any Lisa. And then also because it was at college, I don't hope none of the people at college are watching, but a lot of them weren't the best actors, and they would often forget their lines. So I had to cover for people, so I had to learn everybody's line as well to make up for it if they forgot their line or they didn't do it, or they didn't do their moves. So it was like there was just no room for Lisa. And when I did that, like it was like such a, you know, like beautiful experience, because I just didn't, there was no possibility of having any person, person. You know, you're totally in the moment of it, and the words are just so beautiful. Like this kind of made up language and the play and the rhythm of it.
Yeah, I mean, you could be talking about performing music and the same. It's exactly the same words. It's so
Yeah,
interesting how
particularly like the rhythm of the words.
the rhythm, the sound, and the immersiveness of it, and the completely goneness of anything that seems to be there controlling, or it's just pure flow.
Yeah. And so when you perform now, when you being creative, I know you also do other creative stuff. Like, what's your agenda with it? You know, I sometimes come back to this, like, what's my agenda?
It's really lately. In a sense, it's a communication, but my agenda is kind of listening, I would say. So it's listening to what's coming through, so to be completely attuned to what's coming through, because anything I try to do, it's going to just obstruct. So if I have much of an agenda, it's going to be kind of a controlling, and it's literally going to just block things. And so it's more about listening to what's coming through, but it's also listening to the let's say the audience. It might be, even if there's only 5-6 people and they're at home and they're sitting on the couch, or at times I would do more intentional where I have people lying down under the piano and all around. And so even it could be like the whole floor of the living room. And I haven't done that in a bigger setting, and so there's a meditative aspect to that. And so people could just be lying down meditating or doing a circular breathing. And then just the performing and the creativity is just this kind of, it almost feels at times like we're on a rocket ship and we're all kind of taking off together. But um, it's just this communion and communication. And it's very palpable sense of just the connection and love and communion, and service also, because it's hard to put to words how much it's not me. It's not me in the sense of anything kind of personal, or it's more like an listening and an obeying and allowing. And when that really happens, it's just so beautiful. Yeah. Like I'm sure I get out of it so much, as much as anybody. If I'm playing something that's beautiful, and I really cannot know, it's very hard. It's almost impossible for me to know if what I'm playing is good or not, or beautiful or not, or I can't, even if after they're telling me that was beautiful, it's like I can't, it's impossible for me to actually kind of know, like evaluate it and know. It's really hard. Yeah. And in the past, it would have been very easy for me to know it wasn't good. And that was kind of the problem. But just this sense of, no, that's not good. No, that's not good. And that was kind of what you were saying. It's what kind of the blocking. That's to me now, it's just more, I really cannot know. Because also, if I know it's good, it's a disaster. It's the same kind of thing. So yeah, the agenda, I guess, is the communication and communion, and there's just something that wants that I can kind of push against and fight or allow. And when I allow, it's blissful, and when I fight it, it's horrible. So why? It's a pretty easy choice. You know?
Yeah, that's really beautiful, that communion. And it's kind of what you're doing in non-duality talks as well.
Yeah, it's so much the same. Like it's kind of mind blowing how similar it is. Just words. instead of, musical notes.
Mm.
And it's always in the sense of, if people want to listen and if it's in service, then there's a motivation, and if not, there isn't. It's but the words could get more. I mean, there's a beautiful dance in using language, because it's a lot more complex, but it's really not about the words. The words are just kind of the ways to maybe address things where things are stuck so that they can naturally flow. But the words themselves are not that relevant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
There's also beauty in that kind of the dance of words and language in a dialogue, in a session or in a group. But yeah, I can see how language can get so tricky, because interpretation and misinterpretation, or as soon as you say something, the opposite is true. But you know
And sometimes energy, the words are trying to pull you into a particular energy. It's an interesting dance. Like if you see it all as really impersonal, like these words that are coming out, like some narratives are trying to get you to buy into them. Whereas with music, it's less like the music is trying to like get you into buy into like a victim story or something. Whereas words, like in their complexity,
exactly.
they're like,
yeah.
And,
that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, like that's the trickiness.
Yeah.
And you could often see it happen, and you're like, no.
my one is like is I can easily get pulled into rescuing, like or maybe not so much easily anymore, but or maybe it is. It's like if somebody's got a problem, like, which obviously when people come with non-duality, often there's a lot of problems, and then there's like, oh, I could have a solution to this. And that's really, even though that can be helpful for people, it's like it's really a distraction in a way as well.
Yeah, 100%. It's 100%. Yeah, it's a dynamic of somebody has something the other one needs, and there's a lack that is fictional.
And then you go off kind of like in this like little, it's like a mining thing, and then suddenly you both, oh, hang on, where have we been?
Yeah, no, I've totally been there, done that. It's I guess you're calling it, I forget how you call it, but I would call it the savior.
Yeah, rescuing. Yeah, rescuing.
Yeah, rescuing, you said. Yeah, for sure.
Savior complex.
Yeah, and that to me was very important, to just the before and after, seeing like there is nobody to be saved and no saving that can be done. And then when the kind of savior energy moves, then it's a lot easier to just notice and go like, that's not important. That's otherwise it's feeding that sense of yeah, that was a really big one for me to see.
The rescuing.
Yeah, because it basically was one of the kind of core beliefs of just a sense of personal will, and the false sense of there's something I can do. And the I that is the I that is separate, the conceptual sense of self. And it all kind of fell at the same time, with that sense of there's something I can do for myself or for others. and there's something, and that's also, there's something that needs to be done as well, you know. And that
And
was, yeah, that
it's
was kind of
brutal.
a death.
And it's brutal for the other people. Like, how do other people respond to you now? Like they're used to you coming in and saving or rescuing them, and then there's not so much energy. Like for me, old
Yeah.
patterns of it come up. Like so say if somebody, I don't know, yeah, there's an urge that comes up to help people, I can see. Like I don't know if that will ever completely go. I can just feel it in me. If it's like if something happened in front of me, I'm the first to run over and do something. I just have that energy.
Yeah, me too.
Like it's yes. But it's interesting how the other people respond to you when that falls away, because I can imagine like what happens with me is they most probably interpret it as not caring about them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, the challenge for me there is communication, how to just communicate that. You know, sometimes I can respond and address that. So in a sense, it's stepping into a kind of a parent role of, okay, I'm going to help out with this, or there is something that I can point out, but there's always this trying to see as clearly as possible if there's anything that's being communicated, that there is something missing over there, and I have something here of what is missing over there. It's very paradoxical, because the more you see that, there's also the other side of something can be pointed out, but it's anything that can, even engaging in a dynamic or in a relating in a kind of format where there is somebody asking and somebody answering. To me, it's very, it's almost like how in that answering can it go from, okay, I'm engaging in this position or role with the point of kind of pointing out a trace or a trail for it to be seen that there's nothing that needs to be given or received, or yeah, it's quite a dance, and quite beautiful actually. And I also have been on that side for so long, and I have appreciated so much people like you, whom I only have had real connection with 3 or 4 teachers, which is a lot, and it's been a huge blessing. And but to have been able to, you know, do the countless sessions I've done with you, which probably pretty much since you started. I think it's been like 10 years since I started sessions with you, and I had already jumped onto your live streams before, so, but it's just been so invaluable. And so I completely understand when that role of asking and answering is engaged with consciously, in a sense. There is something that can happen. I'm trying to say there is something that can be given and received that is of value, but it's always if it's in the direction of, which is something you've done so well, which is to point to, you don't need anything right now. Is everything you want is right here, right now. But maybe sometimes you can't go there directly. You have to kind of go in a little bit of a journey.
Yeah, it's like an art in itself.
Yeah, exactly.
trapeze of the language.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I made sense there, but I was trying to.
Yeah, I totally understand that. It is
Yeah.
really an art because, there is this seeming you're on one side and the person's asking you a question. So there's seemingly this difference. So it could be set up as you, the helper, you, the rescuer, and the person
exactly.
rescued.
Yeah.
And then it's like goal is to both dissolve into nothing, or for you to help guide that dissolving into to nothing. But it's like a dance, because if somebody's coming to you in extreme hell, and in lots of different stories, then it's like finding that opportunity to die together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And there's also just at least I find that I have found so much beauty and love in that form of relating. Almost like there's a point to it by itself in just that relating with a teacher and as a student. Being a student, I have found so much beauty there in that journey, almost to the point where I didn't want that to end. And I had quite a bit of a grieving process when that ended for me, where when I could no longer see somebody as a teacher or see anybody as a teacher, in the sense that now everybody and every relationship and experience is a teacher, but I mean a person that I came to with questions, and when the questions stopped, there was quite a bit of a grieving process. And even just the lifestyle and the identity of being a student in search. And trying to say is that there's also a beauty in the process and the relating when one is a student. It's just there's so much beauty.
Yeah, I'm not sure everyone would find that, like find the beauty. Like I sometimes come across people that are very desperate for that to end, but it does have beauty in it. Like like if I remember the first time I met Ramesh, and the first time, reading Gangaji's books, or like first time I met Tony, and he this, and he used to do this with his hand. I don't know what he does anymore.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah. And the going to India, the walking around the mountains,
Osho has a expression. He said, if you're very far away from home, you should celebrate, because you're gonna have a very rich journey.
Yeah.
With a lot of experience, and that's kind of what I'm talking about, and I totally relate, because I mean, there's nothing better than that ending, but wow,
it's also like the hero's
so
journey.
wild and amazing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like off on your spiritual journey, like there is, I mean, like, it was so exotic and just so in love with the teachers, and I mean, there was also anger and suffering and hatred, but there was this other side as well, that loving going on retreats and immersing myself in that energy. And
yeah, it's kind of like an aspect of the devotional path. Yeah, it could be with a divine entity or Buddha, or it could be a person. The problem if it's that person isn't embodying that wakefulness and that freedom. But if there is more than not that embodiment of that transparency to just freedom, then that relationship is so beautiful. I often say depending on where somebody is, but I find myself, which surprises me actually, but I find myself saying like, don't rush it, take your time, you know, enjoy the journey, because there's also in this desperation to get somewhere, it's kind of not helpful because there's nowhere to get to. But then, you know, there's a reason why I really think there's a reason why when we're seemingly not awake, there's a reason why we believe that we are limited. It serves something. And so to not necessarily take that as something wrong or bad. I think this is one of the first things I spoke to you about. You told me something about, oh, you obviously won't remember, but you talked about two trees and one having being a bit younger, and that the young tree isn't envying the older tree for being maturing and giving fruit. And so that was a beautiful image that was quite helpful for me to see, because I had that desperation, so much mad, crazy suffering. And such a, I mean, today you see online, quite a few people seem to be waking up quite fast. And to me, it was just brutal decades of pain and torture. So,
I mean, like mine was a good, you know, over a decade as well. You know, it sounds like it's not, but yeah, it does sometimes seem like it's getting younger and younger and quicker and quicker.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, amazing. Yeah. That's so good.
And you had lots of Kundalini stuff, if I remember, as well, like lots of
and of the bad type, of the painful torture kind. Ended up in the hospital, and the hospital kicking me out because they couldn't find anything, and they thought I was making up the pain, and I was just agonizing. And then bliss and like incredible, crazy openings, and then physical torture, and up and down and up and down.
Yeah, I remember at the beginning, maybe it wasn't the beginning because time is such a weird thing, like the way we remember it. But I remember early on, like really, when I first spoke to you, like really extreme Kundalini stuff. And then that seemed to dissipate over the years of speaking. But
yeah, that the Kundalini stuff opened up in like 2009. I met my teacher in 1998, and so it was about 10 years after already working really kind of hardcore. And then I met you, 3-4 years after that, or 3 years maybe. There's a lot of that still happening, and in hindsight, I can also connect things a lot better. But then I just thought everything was horrible and shit was happening and everything was bad. But it was very challenging. And I also had past life memories break through, and they were trauma. Basically, it wasn't being some king or emperor or anything like that. It's just traumatic experience, and then grieving that, and then feeling completely released and blissed out, and like knowing a well-being I had never tasted in this life.
Yeah, I remember that away as well. Like I remember you also having like extreme blissful periods.
Yeah, very extreme stuff. And yeah, that really, over time, there was some, big shifts. There was till that kind of last shift and the kind of the bigger shift, and then it all really settled. It was just like settled. Yeah. But yeah, you've been such an amazing, and I don't know what word to put there, fill in the blanks, but just
dot.
Yeah, it's like no word feels like it's the right word there. But
so just counting it, so it's like 25 years or something that you did of spiritual seeking, something like that. Maybe a bit less.
That's why I'm saying it's quite long. I mean, I'm sure there's people that have for a lot longer, but
yeah, no, sometimes I work with people at 60 years they've been on the path, or 50 years.
Yeah, and I see that for me, there's a huge part of it was just the resisting of it.
But some people don't have such big Kundalini stuff. Like the Kundalini stuff can be really painful. I had some very painful Kundalini stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not as extreme as yours, but some painful stuff.
Yeah, this was really extremely painful. Like really, like I was feeling like I was being tortured, and I could feel the experiences I knew, and I could feel as if, just very really there were beings who were channeling energy into my body, and it was just exploding, overloaded, like just being tortured. And I remember screaming at them to stop, knowing that it was what was coming was pure love, but I was just like, I cannot take it. It's unbearable. And then having like just these blissful, incredible journeys, and then back into kind of hellish pain. And that would happen 3-4 times a day for weeks. It was like, oh, just remembering it, it's like, oh, it's like, what a roller coaster. Yeah. Yeah, and you remember, I remember you told me that it was about 5-6 years ago, you said maybe what's left isn't that difficult. And I realized that helped me, because I was just certain it just had to be horrible and terrible again. And it had to, there was the last kind of shift that was really hard. That was the hardest of everything. But it was in time, it was just like one night of this kind of massive, difficult experience, which I wrote on my website, a description of it. But it was that kind of the ending of the sense of separate self. That I was just on the floor in like agony and shame, terrified. And I had felt close to that since I started playing piano. Actually, it first came as I was playing piano, and I felt just something happening, which I know now was an opening. And I remember my mind just couldn't take it, and I went into kind of a dream state. But I was sitting at the piano. I didn't, it was just completely as if I was having a vision. And but it was just this agonizing pain, and just gone into a dream, and then I came back. But the taste of it was very clear, and then that started happening more and more the more I meditated. And it was always like, if I stay where I am, it's hard. If I go there, it's hard. But that feels like the direction that's the healthiest and the right way to go. But that's death. This is horrible, and that's death. So 25 years of that. Yeah.
And then there was
definitely worth it.
And there was this surrendering at this last night into the death.
Yeah, and my teacher had said, he told me when I first described that to him, which I described that when I was like 20 years old, 21, he was so excited. And I never had seen him so excited. And he said, that's it, go there, just get close to that. Just give yourself about 20 years. I was like, what? 20 years of this? But it was, and he said, at some point, if you're lucky, you will not be able to stop it. Because I had described to him how I could find ways to kind of push it away and stop that shift. There was a sense of I could kind of control something. And that's just exactly what happened. It just started happening, and I had no ability to do anything. And that's where like the terror just went up and up and up and up and up. Yeah, and that just last big kind of bang. which closer to the time after it happened, I remember saying, if that ever had to happen again, I would rather kind of take a drop of that for another 20 decades than to do it again just one night. It was just so fucking intense. But yeah, if I could say anything about it, it's just the taste of so much love was unbearable.
Mm.
Yeah. And so well, another of my teachers, Richard Moss, my teacher, who was my teacher since I was very young, it's Roberto, and he passed away. Um, and Richard Moss, he just told me after that happened, he says, "You've been running away from this your whole life." And so it's like, but now the mountains are the mountains and the trees are also the trees, and kind of get on with life. But it was just so clearly what the last thing I wanted and the thing I longed for the most.
Mm. It's really beautiful to have seen the transformation over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful to you, Lisa. Yeah.
It feels like nothing, but that feels like
yeah.
I
get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. But it's like those words want to come out.
Yeah.
But I totally get it. Yeah. It's just a celebration.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. Well, we made it. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to make it interview if it would just be silence, but we did. The art got us and got us going.
Creativity got us going.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, it's super beautiful. Yeah, thanks, Nico.
Yeah, no, thank you. Such a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
For anybody that's watching, I'll just do the little bit because we didn't do it at the beginning. I'll link Nico's website in the box below.
Oh, yeah.
So you can find out more about his story.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Nico. I stopped the recording now.
Yeah.
Oh.